Ask any self-respecting cartographer to produce a map of Israel and he will struggle. Do you include the Golan Heights? Where does Israel begin and end? The Zionist state is the only one in the world without borders. Ask him to draw a map of the West Bank and he might even give up, because the towns have become separated and fragmented, making it virtually impossible, some say, to have a viable Palestinian state. Well, we're not going to sit down with maps and pencils today, but we have drawn up an excellent panel to discuss Palestine's viability as a nation and all that it entails. My first guest could have written her new book just for today's show. Palestine in Pieces is Kathleen Christisin's latest tome on the region. She is a former CIA political analyst and has worked on Middle East issues for 30 years. Her previous books include Perceptions of Palestine and The Wound of Dispossession, both of which are critical of attitudes within the US and UK foreign policy establishment towards Palestine. Joining her is Palestinian Abed Ayyad, writer and co-author of the book A Child in Palestine, which is a book on the famous political cartoonist Naji al-Ali, who died after being shot in London in 1987. We also have joining us Dr. Tony Klug, author of Visions of the Endgame about the Palestinian conflict and strategy. He's a special advisor on Middle East to the Oxford Research Group and is also vice chair of the Arab Jewish Forum. And finally, Eyal Sivan, an award-winning filmmaker, producer and essayist born in Haifa and based at the University of East London, where he is a reader in media production. He's always been a vocal, unabashed critic of Israeli policies, not only in his films, but in all of his public appearances. Some people might say it's Palestine that's been wiped off the face of the map. I mean, where is it going to end?
Well, it paints a very depressing picture. I'm among those who, shortly after the war of 1967, called for two states based on the 1967 borders, and certainly expected it to be implemented within a few years of that proposal. And there were fewer than 5,000 settlers on the West Bank at that time. There are now, as you know, including East Jerusalem, about 500,000. And we're in danger of reaching the wrong end game. The conflict, I think, is on the verge of becoming unresolvable. In my opinion, I stick to what I said nearly 40 years ago, that two viable states is the only way of resolving this conflict. I don't believe there is an alternative.
Would you agree with that, Eyal? Two states?
No, I don't, because I think that this denies reality. And also, like, I don't agree with the idea that Palestine disappeared. Palestine disappeared. This is a wishful Zionist thinking. Palestine exists in the mind of Palestinians. It exists through the resistance of Palestinians, through the fact that there are people that are Palestinians. And as we know, land do not vanish. The land is there. And this is the reality today. The reality today in the area is that there is one state. There is one state that has borders, that decides upon if will be an authority to the Palestinians or not, if the president of national authority can move or not, if what people can move, can eat, can survive. So this one state, which we call the State of Israel, is today a state that implies total discrimination upon different fragments of society. And the big question is how we transform the state. We democratize it, we come to egalitarian state. This is the real thing. We have to accept that the idea of two states that I supported also in the past, like Tony, today it is the main weapon against any solution of the conflict. If you just take the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu himself is saying, I'm for two states, and the question is not upon to me, the Israeli, to come to say I'm for one state or two states. The question is Palestinian volition and how to come and to collect the Palestinian voice. Palestinian, we're not talking only about Palestinian inside, but also about Palestinian refugees in camps and in diaspora, and to try to understand what is the Palestinian will. Whatsoever, and this will be my last sentence, is I believe that the real question is the end of the occupation. The end of the occupation is the starting point to start to speak about the end of the conflict.
Abed, I can see you're wanting to jump in here.
Well, I think Eyal made a very good point towards the end, which was about it's a question of Palestinian volition, and I think that the idea is that for people who follow this conflict regularly and intensely, there's been this new trend, this new fashion to speak of a one-state solution, as if the one-state solution was somehow going to solve the problems for the Palestinian people, and I don't think it will, because the only one-state solution that I could envision is one where the Israelis continue the kind of pattern which Eyal speaks of, continue a pattern of internal discrimination and have multi-tier systems of citizenship. And I think it's important to realize that such systems do exist in the world and have been tolerated by the international community. And because I know, and anybody who lives in a country where you can go to an airport that has flights to Israel can see this, Zionism is still alive. There are people who still immigrate to Israel to become Israeli citizens, and they're not immigrating to Israel because they want to share the country of Palestine with people like me. Now, I believe intensely that the real just solution to the cause would be a Palestinian state, from the river to the sea, as it were.
Kathleen.
Could I jump in? I have a lot to comment on. I think I would disagree with Tony, first of all, in saying that the conflict is reaching the point of being irresolvable. I think it has already reached that point. Eyal said that the solution is to end the occupation. I don't think we can end the occupation because Israel has no intention, I don't believe, of ending the occupation, of forming ever two states. And I think I am a one-state advocate because I think that's the only just solution, and I recognize the difficulties, and I know that it's entirely possible for the Palestinians to live as a majority population but without any rights in a state like that. That's happened all over the Middle East. But I don't think it's necessarily the way it has to be. I think that the Palestinians don't need to, certainly should not use other Arab states as the model. But I think it is possible. Look at South Africa. Certainly the situation is not perfect there, but who would have thought a few years before South Africa, before apartheid collapsed, that apartheid was going to collapse and that there would be some equality. And I think that can happen with Jewish goodwill. I don't think Jews are all bad. I think ultimately, and I don't exactly even know what I mean by ultimately, I don't think that Israel can survive. I think Israel is going to collapse on itself.
I must admit that I'm quite surprised of some of your thoughts, mainly coming from a political analyst. I think that to come and to say a conflict reaches to its non-solution, it's a non-political idea. I mean, who would have think that the conflict between France and Germany will come to end, or the conflict between Britain and France will come to end, or the wall of Berlin will come to fall?
I guess what I mean is it's irresolvable as a two-state solution.
What I'm trying to emphasize like this is that there is something about this conflict which is exactly what Zionists are trying to emphasize all the time, that it's not a conflict like the other, that it's a total different, that it's a state of exception. And in this case, if it is exception, so also Israel behavior or whatever is an exception. The fact that there is no legality, international legality applies to this conflict, it's an exception. I think that we have to really be very careful about trying to dehistoricize this conflict. In fact, we have to do the contrary. It is a conflict. It is a conflict about territory.
It is a conflict, but if you resolve a conflict, you resolve it between Jews and Palestinians in Palestine.
The question is not between Jews and Palestinians, and I will continue to refuse it. The question is not about this. The question is a conflict which is between one perception of what should be the West in the Middle East and another perception of the idea of ending colonial attitudes within the Middle East.
Who are the main players then? If it's not between Jews and Palestinians, who is it between?
Well, we know who are the main players. The main players are the players that Kathleen was working for many years, which are the ones that decided this is Western world. Those are the
does it not
players.
Make it all the more poignant?
We have to remember that Israel is not a creation of the Zionist movement. This is wrong historically. Israel is a creation of an international vote after Second Second World War that believed that Israel, the independent state of the Jews, is the final solution for the Jews.